が私の騎士様がこんなに強いなんて。大きくなったら力でねじ伏せられて無理やりあんなことやこんなことを。
We thank the almighty Naruto, hallowed be his date bio, for the bountiful feast laid before us tonight. Winter's anime crop may have left many fans feeling peckish, but we trash goblins are gobbling like we've never gobbled before. Harems upon reverse harems, Isekai upon reverse Isekai, hastily reheated vintage edgelord junk food, and more elf than you can shake a branch of the world tree at. Plus, a GOHANDS anime. So tuck in your trash bib and say itadaki yum, cause it's time for Shea Garbage's biggest hot trash menu ever, brought to you by Rosetta Stone, who are helping me serve up today's Trashpetizer, Nihone Yokoso Erufu-san. Or welcome to Japan, Miss Elf, if you haven't used Rosetta Stone yet. Quite possibly the most relatable reverse isekai I've seen in years, as it follows a cute elf girl, that's, not the relatable part, as she acclimates to her new life in the land of the rising sun. That part is, albeit she got here through a magic dream portal in her salaryman anchor husband's head rather than a work visa plus aeroplane, but still, watching her wander around, soaking in the sights and sounds of this modern mega metropolis built on layers upon layers of rich history, I certainly relate to her sense of wonder, and I definitely relate to the pride she feels when she speaks her first words in Japanese. Though, those words might have come a little easier if she had some help from our partner. And the amazing thing about Rosetta Stone is that a visitor from another world could actually use their app to learn Japanese or any of the other 24 languages included in the lifetime plan, because their patented immersive teaching method trains you to associate the words you're saying directly with the images and concepts they represent. So you or Elf-san get to start speaking your target language from day one, and with their true accent tech, you'll be learning to pronounce it properly every step of the way with the help of native speakers. Whether you want to learn Japanese to guzzle trash anime and classic kusoge straight from the tap, or you'd like to organ bargain with the human traffickers who get you to and from our restaurant, Rosetta Stone can help. And you can get a lifetime's worth of that help for 60% off by using the exclusive offer for Shea Garbage diners at the link in the doobly QR code on your menu? Oh, hey, we actually do have a QR code. Anyway, point is, this is a restaurant, and that's an amazing deal. Of course, Welcome to Japan isn't just a fancy fantasy travel ad. It's also a laid-back little isekai thing about exploring dungeons and exotic locales with your cute elf wife, plus eventually also the big-titty dragon mommy who steals all the booze from your fridge. Not the trashiest thing in the world by any stretch, more of a cozy elf cuddling fantasy than the hot and heavy elf Shane Dawsoning one we're serving up for our main course, but that's exactly what makes it a perfect Trashpetizer. It's a nice little self-indulgent treat, a morsel of magical wish fulfillment with just a hint of spice that's just wholesome enough to go down smooth and not upset your tummy. I give it 2 of our patented trash can shaped bread baskets full of fresh and fluffy garlic baguette slices. The perfect thing to wet your whistle before tucking into our all-you-can-eat Isekai Slop buffet. Now, if you're looking for that classic slop flavor, you'll probably want to start with a bite of possibly the greatest alchemist of all time. A story about a guy who's not one of the big destined Isekai heroes, but got accidentally caught up in it when they were summoned, so the sexy nurse goddess gives him some OP alchemy powers by way of compensation and sends him as far away from the power-hungry kingdom that did the isekai summoning as possible to start his new life as a humble merchant, which of course immediately gets a whole lot less humble as he uses his powers to craft OP weapons that can kill monsters real good, finds out the powers themselves are also pretty good at killing monsters, gets a cute spider pet that, surprise, kills monsters pretty good too, and so on and so forth until he's got a bunch of hotties hanging off his and a pile of dead dungeon bosses lying at his feet. Let's be real, you've seen this anime before in bits and pieces of other anime. maybe with more of an emphasis on magic or skills than crafting systems, but that's just a difference in spice flavor, not a fundamental change to the stat screen jerk-off fantasy recipe. It's not the best one of these things by any stretch, but with decent animation and charming enough characters, it's far from the worst either. I give it 2 crates full of low-grade crafting materials and vendor trash. For those seeking something a little different from their isekai, Headhunted to Another World from Salaryman to Big 4 should have been the season's go-to show. The setup is pure gold. When the Demon Lord needs a water elemental to fill the 4th Heavenly King slot in his evil army, he uses otherworldly magic to summon forth the perfect man for the job. Overseas manager Denosuke Uchimura. His powers include micromanaging logistics on a shoestring budget, finding compromises in fraught business negotiations, building sustainable corporate culture in foreign locations, and absolutely no magic or fighting skills whatsoever. But that's what the big titty dragon lady, the small titty cat girl, and the mysterious person in the freaky diving suit are for. His job is making sure their armies don't fall apart on the way to the front line. And when you're balancing the clashing needs and cultures of ogres, demons, minotaurs, and more, that's no mean feat, even if it's not the kind of feat we typically have death battle debates about. Unfortunately, the negotiations he gets called in for don't really live up to that hype of his business genius. The problems he's asked to solve are mostly basic issues of miscommunication or entrenched mismanagement, and the solutions are equally simple, easily reached after grabbing a single drink in his Mind Palace izakaya with whatever co-worker happens to be helping him that week. Also, a lot of sexy monster ladies end up throwing themselves at him within like 5 minutes of meeting him. So, it's not quite the total genre subversion many were hoping for when they first heard of it, but it is still a fun little fantasy comedy thing with an extra emphasis on the comedy, and a cast consisting of consenting adults, which is still pretty darn fresh by isekai standards. Headhunted to Another World gets 2 big breaths of almost fresh air, sealed inside of airtight trash bags and held aloft by a small steady flame in a clever, trash dirigible contraption. Now, if you're okay with an isekai that's not all that fresh, but still has a hero who gets fresh repeatedly in like every episode, the daily life of a middle-aged online shopper in another world may just be the anime for you. After getting transported to another world for, and I quote, no apparent reason, professional illustrator Kenichi Hamada also finds he doesn't have any OP fighting or magic skills, but what he does have is unlimited storage space and access to Amazon.com, with automatic gold to yen conversion and Prime-enabled same-second shipping. So any monster he can't take on with muscles or magic, he can just one-shot by summoning a backhoe. That is, when he's not doing backshots in hoes, from furries to noble ladies to tavern wenches, drawn to his laid-back artist charisma and massive piles of money that he made through his Amazon reseller hustle. The 2001 A Space Odyssey montage that kicks his whole isekai journey off with a false start when he survives an overwork-related heart attack, followed by him just sort of randomly poofing out of his kitchen one day, sets the tone for the show perfectly. This anime is irreverent, quirky, and not particularly interested in spending time on setup that it could be spending on wish fulfillment instead. If you want to see a protag-kun who's not just another blank slate teenager get rich and get his wet, it won't be particularly pretty or narratively satisfying, but this show will give you that, and some good laughs along the way. I give it 3 crackling Amazon warehouse dumpsters full of fursuits, farming equipment, and prophylactics. Now, finally, in an actual departure from the typical isekai formula, Magic Maker: How to Make Magic in Another World follows a man who's dreamed of using magic ever since he was a little boy, but having been tragically born into our crappy reality, never got the chance after, when he turns 30 and finds out virgins don't become wizards after all, he's so disappointed he has a heart attack and dies on the spot. Though, as the title suggests, his disappointment has only just begun. Even after reincarnating in a parallel fantasy world full of monsters and medieval stuff, the one thing that's missing is magic. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, just that no one's discovered it yet. So with the help of his precocious older sister and their cute childhood friend, he sets out to investigate any magic-ish phenomena he can find and use scientific deductions to unlock a method of harnessing that power for himself. He solves it in episode 1. Turns out the secret was incest.
じゃあ僕は結婚せずに姉さんと一緒にいるよ。僕はまだ子供だけど、この言葉は嘘じゃない。僕は姉さんのそばにいるから。
Shockingly, Magic Maker isn't all that trashy outside of that one very trashy plot point. Its scientific approach to magic is legitimately interesting, and in this low fantasy setting, someone saw a few goblins near town is enough of an emergency to send a whole hunting posse out after them, which is a nice change of pace from your typical wish fulfillment speedrun isekai. But even if it is mostly wholesome so far and decently original, I can't just not put incest-fueled magic on the menu. And to be brutally honest, the animation quality alone does kind of qualify this one as garbage. It is very much a Studio Dean derogatory anime. I give it one dumpster full of flaming piles of Monopoly money and Alabama marriage licenses. Speaking of Studio Dean, derogatory. I'm a noble on the brink of ruin, so I might as well try mastering magic. Seems like it's going for a world record with its protagonist who masters silent multicasting and creates a clone-run international instant ramen business by the end of episode 1, forgets all about that business, becomes a B-rank adventurer, and gets knighted for his deeds by the middle of episode 2, has 2 pet women plus a princess disguised as a maid chasing his by the end of that episode. Then the princess gives him his own barony at the start of the next one, and by the end of it, he's soul-bound to a dragon, and the princess has given him a massive pile of gold plus the Order of the Phoenix, no relation, as an apology for not being able to pull him up the social ladder faster. And I kind of glossed over how he also gets his own pocket dimension and 3 different almighty magic grimoires along the way. I'd say I was reincarnated as the 7th prince so I can take my time perfecting my magical ability at home, but frankly, if my mom mistook this show for that one, I'd put her in a home. It's ugly as shit, boring as dirt, and stupid as your mom. Sorry, that was uncalled for. I'm just really upset about the hour of my life I'll never get back from this thing. I give it one of the exact same dumpster as 7th Prince, but this time we commissioned it from Fiverr. As an apology to the mothers out there and any other ladies feeling neglected by our anime chefs, we've got a nice heaping helping of Isekai Slop for her up next that'll make your lives feel just as wasted as us boys. Promise of Wizard is a popular, profitable otome gacha thing that's being turned into an anime now because they want to sell you more merch. Basically, think Ensemble Stars, except instead of transferring in as the only female producer in training at an all-hot boys idol school, this unremarkable brown-haired blank slate lady gets isekai recruited as the magic quartermaster of an all-hot boys wizard army barrack. How unremarkable, you ask? Her personality profile says she likes cats and dislikes conflict, and after seeing an entire medieval army appear at the top of her apartment elevator and being rescued by several handsome men who can literally fly, the clue that tells her she may not be in Kansai anymore is seeing a spiral staircase.
やっぱり変だ。うちのマンションこんな階段なかったのに。
Her duties as the sage include holding the hot boys' hands so their magic works better, and literally doing gacha pulls to replace any wizards killed in their annual battles with the moon. Not moon aliens or moon monsters, just the moon. Every year, the moon tries to do a Majora's Mask, and they all get together and kick its ass. Although this year, it kicked their ass back pretty hard, so she's gotta do 10 gacha pulls right at the start. And if that sounds cool to you, or really dumb, don't worry about it, because the anime isn't really about that, except the gotcha pull part. The whole third episode's about her doing a gotcha pull. But other than that, it's about delivering endless exposition about that stuff I just said, while gradually introducing all of its way too many husbandos and making sure they all get roughly equal screen time to prevent a deadly Fujoshi riot. Which, with 20 main wizards plus many handsome side characters, is definitely easier said than done. Hence why all the boys spend all their time saying things instead of doing stuff, cramming every dialogue nook and monologue cranny they can find with details about their backstories and motivations that everyone speaking should already know, like, well, if it isn't Crumbles McFumbles, the only magic pie chef to ever stick his dick in a cursed quiche and live to tell the tale. That's right, famous enchanted diner magnate Jack Von Box. But let me tell you something. One of these days, I will f*** your grandma's famous apple pie, and there's nothing you can do about it. Please write 10,000 fanfics about us, ladies. And then after like 3 episodes of that, she does the gotcha pull, so now there's 10 more guys we gotta learn about. Though, thankfully, keeping track of them all is made just a scooch easier by the fact that they're all named after famous fairy tales, books, and poems, such as the powerful former Wizard King Oz, the magic Shota twins Snow and White, and the secretary of the Central Country.
私は中央の国の書記官クックロビンです。
Okay, I lied. It doesn't actually help that much. I was just trying to cue up the
クックロビンです。
clip because, and I cannot emphasize this enough, there is a major recurring character in this anime whose actual given name is
クックロビン。
I give it one magic goblet full of disgusting gotcha slop. But now it's time to finally wash all those bad tastes out with one of winter's finest isekai flavors. The Red Ranger becomes an adventurer in another world. A delectable medley of classic Japanese cliches for anyone who's ever wanted to see a JRPG boss grow 10 times larger upon being defeated, then get punted into orbit by 5 giant robot animals stapled together into a giant robot person. Or anyone who's ever wished Power Rangers had more witch tits. After valiantly sacrificing himself to defeat the nefarious Breakup King in the finale of his Super Sentai season, Togo Akasaki, aka Kizuna Red, finds himself stuck in an isekai land running on your standard JRPG rules, which don't actually seem to apply to him. Instead, he still runs on his show's rules. When you try to read his adventurer stat screen, you get redirected to his profile page from the Banso Sentai Kizuna 5 promo website instead, complete with a 1-minute sizzle reel featuring the same disembodied announcer who says all his special attack names. His pre-isekai flashbacks all have episode numbers and titles attached, and instead of magic, those special attacks are fueled by literally the power of friendship.
今だ夢と友情の爆裂超新星絆ブラスター
Much to the bafflement of the witch and magic researcher attached to those Yidra Arvolm, who recruits Togo to investigate some magic bullshit for her, but swiftly ends up becoming his permanent friend with benefits after an adventure well done. The benefit is a cockpit seat in his giant robot. Although, to protect his mistress's innocence, her faithful old butler would happily take his gardening shears to Red's cock. There's no rest of that sentence. Oh wait, never mind, there is. And balls. There's definitely plenty of that trashy old isekai taste you know and love here. Stat screens, hot spring fan service interludes, etc., etc. But the Sentai elements add a new spice to the mix that makes it feel fresh somehow. Is it still formulaic? Of course! You're watching 2 of Japan's most formulaic genres do a fusion dance. But that doesn't mean it's not fun as hell. I give it 2 monster corpses blazing with the red-hot passion of friendship. Sometimes all you want's a cool anime with a cool concept that does exactly what it says on the tin. And that's exactly what you'll get from the first diet-friendly, I can't believe it's not isekai option in this buffet dumpster, Solo Leveling, which is back once again to make you leap off your couch and gesture wildly at your TV with one hand whilst excitedly tweeting with the other, then struggle to string together a complete sentence when asked to describe the plot later. For example, in a recent fight, the big mean orc guy was all heh heh heh, pew pew pew, but Sung Jin Woo's shadow army was all shh, clang clang clang, which made the orc go whoa, whoosh. But then there were still too many of those shadow guys, so he started going wah, boosh boosh boosh. But then Sung Jin Woo was all and then everyone watching was all, damn bro, you're so huge. How'd you even hide that monster in pants that tight? You can argue it wouldn't be worth much if it wasn't constantly pumping the most eye-searingly awesome Sakuga and Sawano music imaginable directly into all of your face holes. Not nothing. The script has its good points too, as I covered in the problem with power fantasy anime. There is a certain art to turning your brain off and keeping it off, but definitely not much. The thing is though, it does have the Sakuga and the Sawano music and stupid cool storyboards and sound design consistently every episode, which you really can't take for granted these days. It's definitely fast food, but really f***ing tasty fast food made with fresh, high-quality ingredients. Which is why I'm giving Solo Leveling 4 gold-plated A&W Canada dumpsters. Frankly, folks who call that show mid need a reminder of what mid really looks like, which is why we put it next to Farmagia, the shitty half-baked anime based on the shitty half-baked monster farming JRPG with character designs by Hiro Mashima and absolutely no other selling points. Also, that's not a selling point. He knows how to draw like 2 types of women and 3 types of guy with 10 different haircuts. Okay, that's not entirely fair. He's also pretty good at doing like goofy, memorable monsters. And there are some pretty good monster designs just sort of T-posing in the background of this anime. I can see how some studio execs might have thought this was a good enough idea to sign all the contracts that stopped them from backing out when they realized it wasn't. And you know what? Having Mashima only handle the art does create an opportunity for a much better writer to step in and do something interesting with it. They didn't do that, but they could have. You know how fairy tales basically Wish One Piece mixed with Wall Maruto? Farmagia feels like the Temu version of that. The story is a barely comprehensible jumble of fantasy nouns tangled around a political thriller written by a 5-year-old. Its telling is constantly stalled by a baffling compulsion to pad every scene with jokes. The jokes are stuff like, a dog shows up and the main character has a dog phobia, so he hides his head in his friend's skirt, and that main character is a yappy little ball of unjustified arrogance, convinced he's destined to be the world's greatest sprinter despite having never once successfully tied his shoes, who makes Asta Black Clover look like he took his Ritalin. I give Farmagia 1 beat-up trash can full of bootleg Digimon and Monster Rancher knockoffs, half melted by leaking save battery acid. The first time I ever heard the title, even given the worthless appraiser class I'm actually the strongest, I knew I'd be in for a pretty good bad time. While it's hardly the first edgy loner with a Final Fantasy job that everyone thinks sucks, but it rocks actually, and that turns him into a Harem King anime, it might be the most meat-headed example of that concept to date. 'Cause what do you mean people in this RPG universe think appraisal is worthless? Are they just unaware of hidden stats and equipment bonuses? Has no one ever thought, gosh, sure would be nice to know that monster's stats and abilities before it tries to kill me? Is literally every person in this world me as a 7-year-old attack mashing my way through Pokemon Blue? Because that is the only way the premise described in this title even remotely makes sense. And the really wild thing is, none of those obvious advantages are what Protag Kun uses to become super OP and stunt on everyone who laughed at him. He just gets a magic eye made of world tree sap in episode 2 that lets him copy other people's skills and stop time, and the exposition dump lady's just like, yeah, I don't know, that's all appraisal somehow. He also gets a magic titty elf wood nymph lady with healing powers who lives inside that eye, but then the sarcastic exposition dumper wizard lady, who's basically her adopted mom, even though her elf titties are much smaller, starts living in his other eye, so he can't really do nothing with her because mom's always watching. But still, on the whole, this situation is a vast improvement over his past life of picking through garbage and monster corpses because nobody ever used this entire world's one shared brain cell to think of anything better for people who can instantly identify literally anything they see to do. So instead of using his new powers to take revenge on the bully who left him to die in that dungeon, he's just like, thanks, bro. I got me a smoking hot eyeball wife now, so I'ma go fill out my wood nymph harem Pokedex. Peace. And that's, you know, definitely preferable to the school shootery vibes of shit like Failure Frame and Berserk of Gluttony. Chad move, honestly. But the sheer tonal whiplash of the show's first few episodes had me feeling like Dimple the first time he came over to Mob's place. Like, here's how it started. And here's how it's going.
こんな小さな可愛い亀を見殺しにするなんてな。ピナのプライドに殺されるんだ。
私はお嫁さん2号になりますので。
私と結婚してほしい。
Also, I can't help feeling extremely disappointed that he turned down that rich husband offer. Bro was this close to joining Baccarina and Shinji Evangelion in the legendary pantheon of pansexual harem havers, but he just had to pussy out at the last minute. Light novel and harem writers, I say this as a straight man. Give us one bi-slut protag-kun who hits on literally anything that moves, especially his brooding rival character, and I guarantee you will make $1 billion. I give Appraiser Class 3 flaming dumpsters full of all the strategy guides that nobody in this universe has ever read. Unfortunately, while we did manage to swerve a full-on trenchcoat mafia anime this season, we're still not out of the woods when it comes to school-related controversy fantasy, because the next anime about a guy with an underrated skill set who shows all those jerks by getting a sexy harem is I left my A-rank party to help my former students reach the dungeon depths. Tragically, another one of those anime titles that tells you everything you need to know about its plot. Credit where it's due, the reasons that Red Mage Yuke Feldio leaves his A-rank party are abnormally believable for this sort of thing. His guildmates simply undervalue his item-related logistical skills and thus give him a lower cut of their earnings than he feels he deserves, so he bounces to a new dungeoneering startup and strikes it rich. And the setting the story takes place in, where adventurers broadcast their quests and raids on magic Twitch streams for education and entertainment purposes, is moderately novel as these things go. Basically, it's just a cheap plot device to make a shitty old party angry and jealous while they get rich and famous, and the world building makes zero sense if you think about it for more than a second. But as for the characters going on those adventures, can you say we have Rudius Grey Rat's wives at home? Wait, I already used that joke. And Walmart, and Temu, and Wish. The Dollar Tree Grey Rat family? Is that anything? But also, Bandai Namco Pictures did actually animate stuff changing shape and size on its way out of magic bags, which is a nice little flourish you don't often see in fantasy things. And I have seen far more boring anime about guys winning fights by stacking buffs and debuffs. But I've also seen far more entertaining anime about way better ideas for power sets, and at least one infinitely better anime about dungeon crawling logistics that didn't remind me of my 9th grade gym teacher's wife he met at work. I Left My A-Rank Party gets 3 flaming trash cans full of episode 1 Onizuka. Still, stories about underpowered guys who turn out to be OP actually can be a whole shitload lazier than either of those, and a whole fuckload shittier. And Bogus Skill Fruit Master, about that time I became able to eat unlimited numbers of skill fruits that kill you, is a prime example of both. As the title suggests, it's set in a generic RPG world where everyone gets their generic RPG skills by eating magic skill fruits. Also, they make you come a little. But if you ever eat more than one of them, it kills you on the spot. So when the Kirito's skill turns out to be a farming buff that makes fruit grow faster, that instantly dashes his childhood dream of becoming a famous adventurer. And even worse, his hot childhood friend that he shared that dream with gets the best sword fighter skill ever, so she gets to immediately join the top adventuring guild, and he's pretty much never gonna see her again. Or so he thinks, until 3 months later, when the lolly he inexplicably adopted as a farmhand makes dinner with the skill fruits he started farming but didn't tell her they were deadly poison, and instead of dying, he gets an even better best sword fighter skill ever, plus his pet lolly orphan gets a convenient appraisal skill that can instantly tell him what every other random skill he'll get from eating fruits does. So they set out to do some more adventures, save his childhood friend from the famous and handsome hero who's secretly an abusive douchebag and treats his party like a personal harem. Then they do some more adventures, eat some more fruits, he gets some more skills, they meet some new ladies who find out how strong and cool he is, so they all want his now too, and his party becomes a personal harem, but not like how that bad guy had a personal harem and yeah. You know that cooking tutorial I just put out? The problem with power fantasy anime? This anime is literally all of those problems and nothing but those problems. I give it one wastebasket full of cracker crumbs. You would be infinitely better off watching I May Be a Guild Receptionist, but I'll solo any boss to clock out on time instead. A show about a receptionist with big tits and a bigger hammer moonlighting as a solo dungeon raider to lighten her own paperwork load in a quest to not do too much overtime and eventually retire with some cushy benefits. The show more or less immediately drops the secret OP adventurer gimmick to become a regular OP adventurer anime where the OP adventurer just complains a little bit more than usual. But the fights are animated pretty well, the characters are funny and likable, and the focus on comedy, coupled with a long-term goal of economic stability that is in no way helped by any of the cool fights Alina keeps winning, and in fact the fights frequently set that goal back by, for example, a big golem smashing the house she just put a mortgage on, allow us to revel in the wish fulfillment of murdering shit instead of doing paperwork without the story feeling completely pointless and frictionless. It's not the trashiest anime out right now, but it does its job well with cute girls, fun fights, a great sense of humor, and even a little dash of romance. I give it 2 golden dumpsters. For those of you who suffer from complete video game bullshit intolerance, we've also managed to scrape a piece of stat screen free fantasy garbage off the bottom of our bin. Yubel Blatt, an early 2000s grimdark edgelord manga written by a dude who read Berserk and thought, you know what would make this better? If Guts took more time out of his busy schedule to f***er bang random chicks he just met, and also if the horse wasn't just attempted. And that's just the first 20 pages. Not that you'll see any of that in the anime, which cut those scenes, along with the entire prologue, to make this Amazon Prime exclusive a bit more palatable to a wider audience, though I don't know how effective that's gonna be when they still left in stuff like the good guys forcing a small orphan girl to change into child-sized lingerie. And that's just the first episode. Thankfully, they didn't completely remove the real heart and soul of any edgelord fantasy, the insane, over-the-top violence, although they did make it look very silly. F***ing Dollarama, you photable-ass animation. That joke's for my Canadian homies. You'll get it when you're the 11th province. Anyway, the real problem is they cut out so much of the story's actual meat, along with all that fat, that you have to go read all those scenes in the manga anyway, just to find out who this Knight dude and his Team Rocket squad are, and why they're after Protag-kun, or how they know his real identity, or who this Dragon Rider chick in the battle panties is, who's suddenly out to murder him for murdering her brother. Not that the characters they do introduce on screen fare much better. This shit blasts through like 30 chapters in 6 episodes, and all of the names are in German, so you're lucky if you can even keep track of what's a guy and what's a world-building noun. Which is a shame, because the world building does seem like it might be kind of interesting. Cool airships, cool monsters, new civilizations built up around the crumbling ruins of old empires. A lot of stuff I really f with as a fantasy fan. And the characters actually seem like decently multi-layered for this sort of thing. But sadly, out of all the Berserk anime this Berserk knockoff could have knocked off, it just had to be Berserk 2016. I give it 2 wastebaskets full of blood and razor blades, plus 1 of tomato juice and safety scissors. But if you think that's the least likely anime knockoff you're gonna see this year, buddy, I got news for you. Our first Horny and Haremy option of the evening is an honest-to-toad sage Himoto Umaru-chan knockoff in the year of our Hokage 2025. I'm Living with an Otaku Neat Kunoichi is a show for anyone who's ever thought the OG Gamer Gremlin Pet Simulator anime didn't have nearly enough random screaming in it. Also, poorly drawn spandex and sexual tension. Instead of siblings with polar opposite personalities begrudgingly cohabitating, now it's a story about a nerdy gamer guy taking in a sexy gamer ninja girl and doing all her cooking and cleaning for her in exchange for she does a shitty fight scene with a monster once an episode. A girl who's super hardcore about all his hobbies and spends all his money on stuff he'd probably buy anyway, but is just not hardcore enough to never threaten his male ego at Tekken.
つまり対戦格闘ゲームも超うまい。じゃ強すぎ。
Also, instead of incest is nasty, now the only thing stopping them from f***ing is some tsundere nonsense and a nebulously defined ninja code of conduct that barely comes up and doesn't really matter. Except, of course, when it's used as an excuse to add new waifus to the bingo sheet, like the angry Twin Tails lolly one or the shy clumsy one. Admittedly, some of those waifus are pretty unique, like the crypto millionaire Ara Ara landlady one or the teenage convenience store clerk who spends all her free time stalking her neighbors and speculating about their relationships. She's kind of funny, actually, probably the most entertaining part of the whole show, but that's not really saying a whole lot when the last waifu on that bingo sheet is the crazy psycho lesbian. I'm not exaggerating. In Japanese, her character profile literally reads Kureiji Saikorezu. But wait, there's a plot twist. The insane masochist stalker who won't stop ahegao drooling whenever she takes battle damage is secretly a cross-dressing man who can make out of ninja magic. Because why settle for being homophobic when you can also be transphobic? I know much of the show's target audience of anime gooners isn't going to care about that part or might even see it as a positive, but if there's someone out there who can actually goon to this animation, I think we should study his brain in a lab. Otaku Neat Kunoichi gets 1 AliExpress Umaru Kigurumi and some night market ninja stars. Speaking of creepy stalkers and homophobia, when I first looked at the list of upcoming anime for this season, Baban Vampire immediately stood out as a potential trashterpiece. I mean, a gag anime about an ancient, unspeakably horny vampire groomer, played by the king of the groomers, Hisoka himself, on a quest to block his favorite 16-year-old boy from his first crush so he'll still be a delicious virgin when he turns 18? That sounds horrible on every level, but in the funniest way possible, and not just if you have a dark sense of humor. There's a clear setup here for a strong comedy of errors. The vampire wants the boy wants the girl, and the girl wants the vampire because she's 16 and just read Twilight, and all of them are way too fucking stupid to meaningfully advance their goals. Throw in a cast of zany supporting characters like, say, a vampire hunter disguised as a teacher who's secretly a sanguiphilic freak that keeps trying to hook up the kids so the vampire will drink his 31-year-old virgin blood instead. And baby, you got a black comedy stew going. Or you should. But the more I watched Baban Vampire, you gotta sing it like that because the title's a reference to this famous Japanese hot spring song. Anyway, the more I watched, the more it struck me just how much I wasn't laughing. Each episode would get a couple chuckles out of me, like when the vampire does the thriller dance when he thinks no one's looking, or when he's fighting this big, strong Frankenstein-themed high school delinquent and realizes that guy's also a virgin, hence the Frankenstein theming. But mostly, setups came and punchlines went, convoluted blocking schemes were hatched and then themselves cock-blocked. The vampire popped a boner whilst doing the road roller pose, and I was just sitting there bored out of my skull. The whole anime feels a lot like that pun in the title. You can see how the joke's supposed to work on paper, but as soon as you actually hear it out loud, you realize it just doesn't. The timing's off, the delivery's awkward, and what humor is there doesn't really translate without a lot of cultural context, which makes it really weird that somehow this was Netflix's second big new get for the season after Sakamoto days. I give it 1/5 of a Hisoka, emitting some very noxious smoke. Speaking of creepy stalkers, again, I Want to Escape from Princess Lessons is a medieval horror anime that thinks it's a rom-com about a humble country noble lady who's isolated, abused, groomed, and repeatedly kidnapped after she catches the eye of her kingdom's crown prince, who won't let anything or anyone stop him from making her have his babies, especially not her saying no, over and over again, every episode. All the while, her waitstaff, friends, teacher, and even own family constantly cajole and gaslight her into accepting his unwanted advances, and every time she thinks she's found a way out, he pops up and grabs her with the jump scare timing of Michael Myers himself. But for some reason, instead of spooky John Carpenter music and droning industrial ambiance, all of this is backed by the kind of jaunty tunes you'd expect to hear in the other Mike Myers movies. It is charming and romantic, this show insists, when a rich blonde psychopath locks a woman in her room for 5 hours and recites every love poem cliche ever written at her back to back. When he moves her to another room with a hidden bookcase door he can use to come cuddle her against her will at any hour of the night, that's just him being a silly little scamp. And when he maliciously complies with her request to at least warn her before barging in by sending a schedule announcing he will be there literally every night, that's just more playful flirting. In fact, it's her fault for not being more specific when she asked him not to molest her. If I didn't know better, I'd say the show itself was trying to gaslight its own audience in an avant-garde approach to psychological horror, but that's not what's happening here. The far more disturbing reality is this anime is completely sincere. It thinks itself a Pride and Prejudice-y tale of lovers at loggerheads, a Shakespearean comedy of manners, complete with constant soliloquies.
もともと私は王妃なんて向いてない。おしゃれより自然をめでるし口は悪いし。だからこの大自然の中にいることは。何なのこの状況。なんなのあの人。
It is into this, and it thinks you will be too. And if you are, more power to you, lady freaks. I hope you meet your own Ted Bundy one day. But for the rest of us, I'm not saying don't watch this one. It can be very entertaining with the right mindset and a what the f*** even was that sort of way. But you gotta know what you're getting into. Princess Lessons gets 3 flaming prison dumpsters full of thirsty death row fan mail. Luckily, that's not the only girl trash this season has on offer, and the new reverse harem thing, Anyway I'm Falling in Love with You, is still not great about the whole consent thing, honestly.
何
But it only takes her a few episodes to decide she's kind of into that, and the bar is sitting somewhere in the Earth's mantle right now, so we'll take what we can get. Kind of like Protag-chan's doing with that childhood friend after getting swerved by sexy swim club senpai. Though, of course, he's just the first of her 4 insanely hot childhood friends, who are all gonna start hitting on her by the time the show's over. Well, they're supposed to be insanely hot. The animation being what it is, you kind of got to take the show's word for it. But that's par for the course with a lot of the harems we cover on here. Point is, shameless wish fulfillment is what these shows are for. Although, This one does try to pretend like it's about something more sometimes, with a flashback framing device that sees Protag-chan working as a manga editor in her late 20s, looking back on her high school days and seeing that they were a lot more kira sparkly than she realized at the time, just like her manga editor told her all those years ago. For that is the tragedy of youth, you see. We never know what we've got until it's gone, which would be a much more convincing message if she wasn't having regular sleepovers with the 4 hottest guys in school who are so hot they all have their own fan clubs, yet never so much as look at any other girl, and also sometimes they work overnight as her unpaid volunteer manga assistants just because they kind of feel like it. But while all of this is happening, a lot of their school events are being shut down by that virus that's going around.
感染症だかなんだか知らないけど、突然休校になって。
好きな人と花火大会に行くのが夢だったけど、感染症のせいでそれもないし、
感染拡大の影響で地区大会中止だって。
So, yeah, sure, Mary Sue, I totally buy that your teen angst is so extreme you can't possibly see yourself and your 4 boyfriends as shoujo manga characters. Anyway, I'm giving this one 3 horrifying kaiju dolphins. I know that's not really a type of trash and doesn't make much sense, but there's 25 shows in this video, and I am not made of art money. But wait, we're not done speaking of creepy stalkers yet, cause Mona Kawai is here to prove that girls can be just as pushy and obsessive as boys, and Medaka Kuroiwa is impervious to my charms. If pretty privilege were a person, Mona would be her. Born so insanely cute, she was turning heads in the hospital nursery. She spent every day of her life being fawned over and worshipped by everyone around her except for the one new guy in class. Instead of blushing when she turns his way, Medaka only scowls, which only makes her more desperate for his attention and admiration. So she starts subtly flirting with him, and by subtly flirting, I mean flashing her panties and molesting him at every opportunity, only for each advance she makes to be met with yet more scowls, which makes her want him all the more. It's negging the anime. Of course, what she fails to realize is that Medaka is a monk in training, attempting to purge his heart of all earthly desires. So the hornier he gets, the harder he's gotta concentrate. And when he concentrates, he makes a frowny face. That's the joke. And I hope you like that joke, because it is the only joke. Well, the only intentional one. The Japanese internet kind of had a field day with how cheap the OP looks. They call it the insect dance, and I'm giving this one 2 insect dancers out of 5. Winter's trashy rom-com lineup might be seeming pretty dire at this point, but thankfully, the 100 girlfriends who really love you is still here, still peak, and only getting peaker with each new girlfriend that joins Rentaro's, At what point does a harem become a cult?
それじゃあメイド彼女加入会ということでベタとベッド服を着ましょう。んなもん着るわけないでしょ。
みんなのメイド服姿かかわいいだろうな。
At any rate, I already made a whole video-esque food review about 100 Girlfriends last month, so I'll spare you any repetition. Suffice to say, it's the absolute pinnacle of this genre, a delightfully zany comedy that delivers more sincerely compelling romance than most shows with 1% of its love interests, and a shining example of what 5 golden dumpsters looks like. Now, I'm getting married to a girl I hate in my class isn't quite that good, but it is a hell of a lot better than I expected from that title, which could easily describe like 20 different anime we all forgot existed throughout the 2000s. I still definitely would have forgotten it if it came out back then, but in more of a, oh yeah, that show sort of way than most of those, oh yeah, that shows. Like all the best rom-coms, most of the cast is certifiably psychotic, especially the romantic leads, and especially their grandparents, who forced them to marry each other in order to vicariously live out their own high school tryst they were too scared to have all those years ago. Akane is a hyper-competitive, rules stickler workaholic with a hair-trigger temper and a hardcore cute animal addiction, while Saito's a genius gamer slacker who thinks thinks bathing is optional, garbage goes out once a month or so, and juice boxes, cup noodles, and protein shakes constitutes a well-balanced meal plan. It goes without saying these two butt heads constantly, which makes it a pleasant surprise that they actually start getting along and moving their romance along at a decent clip once forced to cohabitate. Instead of building an entire status quo out of one rapidly tiring gag, take notes, Medaka. The opposites attract each other immediately, creating room on either side for all the crazy people around them to start crowding in and complicating things. With the standout of the bunch definitely being Shisei, Saito's ride-or-die cousin slash Emoto, who is cute enough to get away with basically anything and fully willing to weaponize that.
I fear no man, but that thing, it scares me.
It's not a revolutionary anime by any means, but as waifu delivery systems go, it's a well-oiled machine that gets the job done. 2 golden dumpsters. Our first main course of the evening is another throwback of sorts, though a far more specific one. True trash connoisseurs will fondly remember 2014's insanely violent and equally horny psychological harem thriller Fruit of Grisaia, which followed the only guy at an all-girls school slash prison slash insane asylum's efforts to make his classmates open their hearts and also legs and unravel some Poundland Metal Gear conspiracies along the way.
Behind D. Colonel, what's a Russian gunship doing here?
Grisaia Phantom Trigger is a sequel of sorts with a mostly new cast of characters and relatively self-contained story that you can jump right into even if you haven't seen the original, in which Mihama Academy, the backdrop for all of that show's sex and violence, has been transformed into a training facility for SWORD, the special organization for research and development, which mostly researches ways developing young women can murder people. Because of course, as anyone who's seen Lycoris Recoil and Noir and Gunslinger Girl and Kite and Mezzoforte and Kill Me Baby and holy shit, there's a lot of these knows, high school girls are the best assassins. Pretty much the only assassins, actually. In fact, when you're an orphan girl in nondescript foreign slum country, your career choices are prostitute or hit woman. That's it. That's the only 2 options. And they decide which one you get at the prostitute slash assassin temp agency by asking you exactly one trick question. Aha, Geoff, you say. I've caught you fibbing now, for you see, I have played the Hitman game starring bald clone assassin Agent 47, and thus I know there is at least one other type of assassin, sexy nun assassin. But here, you fool, you have activated my trap card. For while there are indeed nun assassins in this anime, with bulletproof habits no less,
まだ挨拶の途中だろうが。挨拶ってのは人が人がましくあるために神が与えたものだぜ。
They are, in fact, just the Catholic school variant of your typical Joshi Kosei killer. Now, with Phantom Trigger, this visual novel franchise has officially reached the stage of fatification, where basically all of the hentai elements are gone and the focus is mainly on action and character drama, but that still means you'll see a girl turn the corner on her estrangement with her father plus mountain of childhood trauma immediately after beating another high school girl in a sniper duel by using her teenage ninja friend's ass as a bipod. And many of the cuties turning dudes into blood piñatas in these gorgeously animated action scenes are expecting to be paid in hugs and head pats later. If that sounds like a fun time to you, make sure you watch the 3 Phantom Trigger prequel OVAs before they disappear from YouTube at the end of March, or else the rest of it on Crunchyroll will be pretty confusing. But with that caveat, I give it 3 golden dumpsters. But we both know you're not just here for tasty trash like that. You want a whiff of the stinkiest garbage the anime industry has to offer. Something so bad, it's legitimately awe-inspiring. And nobody cooks up disaster pieces of that caliber quite like the garbage artisans at Studio GOHANDS. With their eye-searing signature blend of PS2 cutscene CGI and janky 2D over-animation, an eye for camera work matched only by the most inebriated of acrobats, and the finest skyboxes ever crafted by a man who's never seen a cloud before. Their anime are consistently, bafflingly, nauseatingly awful in ways you must see to believe. Their work has improved somewhat, or declined upward since they hit their absolute nadir in 2017's Handshakers, but they are absolutely back on their F game with their new original post-apocalyptic cute girls doing cute things and also shonen battles, plus some 3-minute chibi cooking tutorials, action, tragic comedy, Momentary Lily. If that sounds like a confusing headache of a description to you, you should try actually watching the thing. This show feels like someone dropped acid, half-watched the first 4 episodes of Madoka while playing Cooking Mama, got bored and started Nier Automata instead, then snorted a rail and tried to write a K-On! Clone. And not a single one of those bits is remotely good. The action scenes are as nauseating as Handshakers, the lore makes even less sense somehow. The dialogue scenes are animated like the physics on everyone's hairs kind of glitching out, and every time they talk it resets its Z position, and the dialogue itself feels like those waifus are competing to see whose annoying gimmick will make you Uzumaki your own eardrums first. You've got the sassy Gyaru who incongruously quotes old obscure proverbs, the class rep ninja girl who inserts the English word giruti into every other sentence for no apparent reason, the monster energy swilling gamer girl who never stops talking like this.
My life is like a video game, trying hard to beat the stage, all while I am still collecting coins.
And then there's the One-sama character who says ara ara as frequently as that other girl says giruti, and her boobs seem to be on the same physics engine as the hair, and don't stop doing that even when she's f***ing dying. Momentary Lily gets one toilet trash can full of drug mule condoms and used airsick bags on a typical Boeing aeroplane in current year. Now, we've gobbled up a lot of trash tonight, but I hope you saved just a bit of room because we saved the best for last. While they clearly threw all of their animation budget for winter into Welcome to Japan Miss Elf, Zero G made up for that by pouring all of the spice they left out of our Trashpetizer into their second big titty elf girl dish of the season, Behe Neko. The elf girl's cat is secretly an S-ranked monster. As the title suggests, this anime follows an unnamed knight who's reincarnated as a baby behemoth and gets adopted by an up-and-coming elven adventurer when she mistakes him for an adorable kitty cat. Whenever she's in danger, he uses his OP S-rank monster skills to protect her as best he can, while still keeping his true nature a secret, and in return, she,
アリアちゃんも人事じゃないにゃ。エレメンタルキャットって一種交配できる生き物にゃ。それがいいじゃないですか。
yeah. Now, you might remember me straight up hating my life as Inukai-san's dog a few years back for doing basically the same thing in a contemporary high school context, and I still do. That show is vile. But for some reason, when I watch Behe Neko, I find myself having a lot of fun. And maybe that's just down to good old-fashioned desensitization, but I think it really comes down to the fact that there's more to these characters and their story than just this pretty girl got a new pet and all her pretty friends want to f it for some reason. To be clear, most of them do still want to do that. Like, at first her cat girl blacksmith friend who wears nothing but overalls is like, damn girl, it's weird as shit you want to f that cat. But then she sees the cat fighting and...
強いオス。
Yeah, also after he murders a dragon and that dragon is reborn as a sexy lady because reasons, she dedicates her entire miraculous second chance at life to making little dragon cat girl abominations.
さあ強き者よ我と一戦交えるのだ
This shared passion is, in fact, the thing that brings this adventuring party together as friends and comrades, but f***ing cats is just one of their mutual interests, not literally the only thing they ever do. It's not even the only thing they do with the cat. Sometimes she puts a cute little dress on him and takes him on picnics. They also take on quests, go dungeon delving, and fight monsters to earn new skills and equipment that then let them fight bigger monsters and do harder quests. The show's built around a typical but well-executed lit RPG progression loop, albeit with more bath scene interludes than usual. And because of the gimmick that the party's strongest fighter has to hide his power level, it even manages the occasional slideshow of a decently tense fight. Don't get me wrong, it's nothing amazing. It doesn't even clear most of our can't believe it's not isekai buffet, but it does give the story something to be about that's not cat f***ing for at least half of each episode. So when it does return to Shane Dawson mode, you still get that holy shit, they really went there reaction instead of Inukai's ah shit, here we go again. Which is the difference between the sort of trash you can sit down and laugh at with friends and the irredeemable garbage that just leaves you all staring in uncomfortable silence. Behe Neko might still have that effect if you can't find the right kind of friends or the right kind of intoxicants, but it is a glorious 5-alarm dumpster fire if I've ever seen one. And I am so glad that we could end our biggest menu ever on such a high note. Now, we have heard your complaints about all the concussions from our valet kidnapping service, so you'll be happy to know that we've proactively drugged that last course so no one has to knock you out tonight. Those drugs are a little expensive, but as they say in Japan, omae wa mo, we're selling your kidney on eBay. Deru. Nighty night!